الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We continue with Sahih Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, and we still with Kitab al-Iman, the book of al-Iman, faith, with the different chapters of this book. As we heard briefly before, Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he compiled these Hadith in Kitab al-Iman to show the proper belief in al-Iman, the belief of the people of Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that the Iman is qawlun wa amal, speech and actions, increases and decreases. And we said before many times, speech and actions meaning the belief in the heart and the deeds done by the heart and the speech of the tongue and the actions done by the body. And this is all comprises al-Iman. And he brings all the hadith to prove this. From the Iman is this, from the Iman is this. Prophet ﷺ is asked about the Iman. One time he would respond with the pillars of al-Islam. So Iman is not just a belief in the heart and that's it. That's a deviant belief if a person believes this way, which makes the actions of the person has nothing to do with the Iman. No, the speech or the belief in the heart and the actions and the speech and the whole entire life and actions of the Muslim, this is part of al-Iman, and it increases with and decreases, increases with the good deeds and decreases with the bad deeds. And also one of the great benefits, that if a person commits a sin, the sin affects one's Iman, not the Aqidah. The Aqidah is basically matters of belief, right? It can, if a person continues to be committing sins and so on, it can affect one's Aqidah. But the sins weakens the Iman, and the more the Iman gets weak, the more the person is getting closer to having the Iman to be taken away completely, especially at the moment of death and so on. So a person has to be careful. This is another benefit when a person is about to commit a sin or in the state of a sin, that this would affect his Iman, so he would always complete his Iman with being dutiful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and constantly repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking Allah for forgiveness, to be always in state of repentance. That completes the Iman. So after the set of chapters that he talks about the deeds are part of al-Iman, then he talks in some chapters about the opposite of the Iman, the word kufr, that sometimes when it's mentioned in the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it does not mean the disbelief that would take the person outside the fold of Islam. It can come in the context of sins. And this is what he says here in this chapter. باب كفران العشير وكفر دون كفر. The chapter of كفران العشير, the word kufr. كفران العشير, as it will be mentioned in the hadith in the chapter. كفران العشير, al-ashir comes from al-mu'ashara, from good living. So when someone would do kufran to al-ashir, that means he in state of denying the good living. And as we would see, that this is something the Prophet ﷺ warned mainly the women from. When a person would not undermine the good living that a person lived with someone, and would deny the favors that has been done from another person to him, he would deny this and not being grateful, as we will see in the hadith inshallah ta'ala. And it's called kufran, right? So it's not the disbelief that would take the person outside the fold of Islam, but it's a major sin, and it's definitely a sin. Wa kufrin duna kufr, and kufr less than kufr. So there is kufr, which takes the person outside the fold of Islam, and there is kufr, that is in the level of the sin, major sins. And if a person do it, he is not necessarily a kafir, a disbeliever, a Muslim sinner. Did an act of kufr. And we have to really, get to know this very well, because sometimes, or some people, those who deviated from the truth, when they took some of these ahadith, and they would immediately call people kuffar, disbelievers, as a result of sins being committed. And of course, these are the Khawarij, those who the Prophet ﷺ called them the dogs of the hellfire, and he said that they go out of the deen of Islam like the arrow goes out from the bow of, and so on. And those who are alike of them, those who would call the believers or the Muslims disbelievers, kuffar, because of a sin or a major sin that they committed. So we have to be careful not to fall into this deviation. So that definitely this is a matter of belief. He says, still part of the title, فيه عن أبي سعيد الخدري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. That in this there is a hadith from Abi Sa'id al-Khudri رضي الله عنه, from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, and it's the same hadith that will be mentioned in the chapter, but in a different place. He mentioned it in Kitab al-Hayd with the same context of the hadith. Or some said the hadith of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, مَنْ لَا يَشْكُرِ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرِ اللَّهِ, which means whoever is not grateful to people, he's not grateful to Allah, which is the meaning of kufran al-ashir. When a person would not be grateful to someone that did favor to him, right? He is not being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Part of being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to thank others, to thank human beings, especially those who have great favors upon you. Parents, mother, father, right? And for the wife, to the husband, and so on, as we would see in the hadith. Then he says, one hadith in the chapter, he says, حدثنا عبد الله بن مسلمة عن مالك عن زيد بن أسلم عن عطاء بن يسار عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهم. Sometimes we will talk about the chain of narrations, and this chain of narration actually it's an amazing one. Right? They're all Imam of this deen. They're all great scholars of this deen, and this is a common thing to the narrators of the Bukhair. Right? You would find a lot of them, not normal people in the streets. There are people of knowledge and Imam of this deen, and they reached the level in which people were in need of their knowledge and actions, not just information, but they were righteous people, pious people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them to save the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. People mention their names till today, till the day of judgment, when we mention the Hadith and saying rahimahumullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on them. So many people continue to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. Every time that Hadith is being recited and taught, right, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it in the balance of their good deeds, which shows how virtue it is to pass on the knowledge of the deen of Islam. After a person dies, still the good deeds are coming as a result of people studying the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, saving the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Abdullah ibn Maslama, which is the sheikh of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, al-Qa'nabi, when you read about his biography, you would find very interesting things, and I think we talked about it before. Imam Malik, which is he narrated from him, right? Which is now he is the one before Imam Malik. That means Imam Malik is higher than him. He's a student of Imam Malik rahimahullah, right? So he's a student of Imam Malik, but whenever Imam Malik rahimahullah, one time he saw him, the student came, and Imam Malik said to the students, I see a man that is the best man on earth today. He was referring to Abdullah ibn Maslam. And many people don't know him, right? And this is such a shahada, a tazkiyah from Imam Malik rahimahullah to a man like this. What kind of deeds and knowledge these people had, right? And this man, Abdullah ibn Maslama, as it was said in his biography, people whenever they see him, he would make them by just, he comes in, they would remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by saying La ilaha illallah. There was something in this man, knowledge and righteousness, that people whenever they see his face, they would say La ilaha illallah. Remind them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the characteristics of the righteous ones, right? And these are the ones that a person should be close to, the ones that remind him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the ones that would remind you of the sins and forgetfulness and so on. So this is Abdullah ibn Maslam. He's narrating the hadith from Imam Malik rahimahullah, as Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, he called him Imam al-Dunya, right? The Imam of this dunya at his time, right? Where people came to him from faraway distances to seek from his knowledge. And again, these Imam, of course Imam Malik is one of the famous of the four Imam of the Madhahib. They're all students of one another, and they all, their goal was to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is also one of the people that his life should be studied, and his statements, and how he was so, stressing the fact of how to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And he was in Medina, rahimahullah. And many quotes from him to show how he was holding fast and calling people to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and one of which ما لم يكن يومئذ دينا فلن يكون اليوم دين. If it wasn't deen at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it's not going to be deen now. Calling people to follow the deen the way it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And he would stand by the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and he would say كل قول يؤخذ منه يترك إلا صاحب هذا القبر. Every statement you can take from it or reject it, except the one in this grave. He's the one that his words is never to be rejected. Anyone else, their words can be refuted. A person, it's valid for them, even if a person is so righteous and so knowledgeable, it's valid that he would say something that is wrong. They're not sinless, they're not people that are free from mistakes, except Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the one that we take his words and we submit ourselves to what he ordered us alayhi salatu wasallam. Zayd ibn Aslam. So he said عن مالك عن زيد ibn Aslam. Right, Zayd ibn Aslam, his father was Mawla al-Umar radiallahu anhu. He was a slave of Umar radiallahu anhu. Right? And Umar radiallahu anhu used to honor his father, and his father is from the Imam of the Deen also. Although he was initially one of the slaves of Umar radiallahu anhu. And I don't want to take too much time in this, but one of the things that is mentioned about Aslam al-Umari again, because he was servant of Umar radiallahu anhu, that he sent him one time, Umar radiallahu anhu sent him to one of the sons of Umar radiallahu anhu. And he wanted him to tell him, for the son to come and talk to Umar. So he asked him, and he told him, don't tell him why, because I'm afraid that he might lie. When he feels, Umar wants him, that means he's in trouble. So he's afraid that the son would say a lie, so he just tell him to come without mentioning the reason, because he knew the reason. The reason was that Umar heard that his son is being called Abu Isa. His kunya is being given as Abu Isa, right? So he wanted to call him, what is this? We'll see later. So when he went to him and he told him, Umar, he wants to talk to you. So he said, why? Tell me. He said, I promise that I won't say. And he was young, right, at that time. So he told him, I'll give you like chicken and things like that. So he finally got weak and he told him, right? So when he went to Umar radiallahu anhu, once he saw Aslam, right? And we have Aslam. He's one of the imam of this deen, by the way. He told him he bribed you, right? So he kind of hit him with his small stick, not in a painful way, right? He was kind to him. But then anyway, the reason is Umar radiallahu anhu, he got his son to tell him, what is Abu Isa? Does Isa has a father? Meaning alayhi salam, right? That you should not give yourself the kunya of Abu Isa, right? Because Isa alayhi salam does not have a father, so that the person, whether it's permissible or not, but he was making sure that his son does not call himself Abu Isa, right? So if a person has a son, his name is Isa, maybe he should not be called Abu Isa. But anyway, the matter is permissible, but he just, he was a thing between a father and a son. Sometimes you would order your son to do something, even if it's not haram, or to stay away from something, because this is part of the tarbiyah, part of the upbringing. Anyway, so Zayd, his son, right, was one also of the Imam of this deen. He's Imam of the Imam, and they call it Imam Sheikh al-Islam in matters of knowledge and so on. And he had a dars in Medina, in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's the Sheikh of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, right? And also many great things has been mentioned about him. And Ata ibn Yasar, the student of Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, also one of the Imam of this deen, Ali ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, the nephew of the Prophet ﷺ, the one that the Prophet ﷺ made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma faqihu fi d-din wa alimhu al-ta'wil. Oh Allah, make him comprehend the deen and teach him the ta'wil, the tafsir of the Quran. And that's why you would rarely find an ayah in the Quran that doesn't have a statement from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma. They took the Quran directly from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So why would a person take the tafsir from other than Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, or Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and so on? That's why tafsir should be taken from these great people. He said, we'll get into the hadith. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, and you see all these great people, their actions and so on is in the balance of the deeds of who? The Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is from his ummah. Right? These people, if they were present in nations before, there's no such a similarity to it. And that's why this ummah is the best nation, especially in the early generations of Islam. And the sad part is that their biographies and their statements have been saved. Right? And many of us, we have no idea who are they. Right? When everything is saved about them. When we raise our children and they don't know anything about them. When they know everybody else. So it's very important also that we get to mention them. And I thought even more than one time to make a dars just about these people, the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, the Imam of this deen, to talk about them, to get to know their statements and so on. And you will see the effect of the message of the Prophet ﷺ onto these individuals. The Prophet ﷺ said, أُرِيتُ النَّارَ فَإِذَا أَكْثَرُ أَهْلِهَا النِّسَاء يَكْفُرُ. Prophet ﷺ said, أُرِيتُ النَّارَ, I was made to see the hellfire. فَإِذَا أَكْثَرُ أَهْلِهَا, and he said والسلام, that when he saw the fire, that he saw that most of the people of the fire, أهلها, أهل الشيء, I mean the people of the fire, النساء, women, يكفرن. Prophet ﷺ said, because they يكفرن, commits an act of kufr. So قِيلَ أَيَكْفُرْنَ بِاللَّهِ, they asked the Prophet ﷺ, do they disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's why they are in hellfire? He said, يَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرِ وَيَكْفُرْنَ الْإِحْسَانِ. They make the kufr of al-ashir, of the good living with someone, and يَكْفُرْنَ الْإِحْسَانِ, and they do the same with al-ihsan, with goodness. Right? لَوْ أَحْسَنْتَ إِلَى إِحْدَاهُنَّ الدَّهْرِ, if you are kind and good to one of them, الدَّهْر, your whole life, ثم رأت منك شيئا, then she sees only one thing from you, قالت, she would say, ما رأيت منك خيرا قط. She would say, I've never seen any goodness from you. Right? As you see, this is a major sin. These things can be said lightly, right? And sometimes we belittle this. This is a reason for a person to be in the hellfire. Right? It's a major sin. To show how it is important to be grateful to others, and to be thankful and so on, and not to belittle the things that can be said with one's tongue. First of all, the word kufr literally comes from a taghtiyah, when you hide something, when you cover something. And a kafir is someone that he hid the iman and he exposed the kufr. Right? Because the iman is so easy for a person to have. And that's why the punishment of not having it is hellfire forever. Because it's supposed to be easy for anyone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him sound mind, that he would clearly see that the only one worthy of worship is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then not to fall in contradictions, right? In which if he's the only one worthy of worship, then he's the only one to be obeyed, and to stay away from disobeying him. And if a person falls into the sin, to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and so on. And this is how a person, when he commits the kufr and the disbelief, billah, is covering this. So yakfurna al-ashir, they are hiding the goodness that they received from their husbands. Sometimes people start being apologetic when they mention these hadith, right? And they start saying, no, actually it's because of how they say about Islam, talking about women. This is reality. This is not something to undermine women. Women are like men when it comes to their responsibilities in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as slaves of Allah. The duties, they have some slight differences because of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them physically different, right? So as a result of that, what fits their physical being, you would find the rulings accordingly, because the deen of Islam is deen of justice. So to give the responsibilities to be the same for men and women, this is unjust, because physically they are different. But when it comes to most of the actions of the deen, you find it equal, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it even easy for the women of this ummah, but not easy in a way that the men would brag about the favors that they have upon them, because this is a bad deed. If a person is doing something, doing a favor to someone, it is haram to do al-man, which is to remind people of your favors. Because again, some men would use this hadith and to throw it on the faces of the wives, right? that you are denying my favors on you. No, that means you're just praising yourself. A person should not praise yourself. But if someone is teaching the women in his family this out of the concern in his heart towards them, because he cares about them, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of his mercy, he made the Prophet ﷺ see that, so that he can warn. He can warn his ummah so that people will act accordingly. And when you see what is the outcome of this hadith, is for people to be sad or to do something bad? No. For people to be grateful to one another, to be thankful to one another, and to be good and kind to one another. So the outcome of it is good. It's not something evil. So yes, the Jannah, most of the people of Jannah are women, yes, but it's as it's mentioned in some of the hadith. And when we read these types of the hadith, a person should be aware of the fact that also there are men in hellfire and so on, but not to be shy whatsoever to mention these types of things, because saying it in the right context and explaining it, it brings definitely what is good. That does not bring oppression or weakness or anything. It brings all means of goodness. And we as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to hold fast to the deen, and we have to be proud of how the deen is, even if people are different. It doesn't matter to us. This is what is right. And what the opposite of that is wrong, right? If people don't understand that, maybe we can explain it in a nice way, but it doesn't make us, not proud of who we are or act accordingly. Women in Islam, they have the best duty that a woman can do, mainly after the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, establishing the salah like the man and all the different duties. But if she is married, right, the most person in her life that have rights on her is her husband. Do women have rights from their husbands? Of course, yes. Nobody would deny this, right? But you would find in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that this is something also the women have been addressed with, that she has to be obedient to her husband. And when we say obedience, is it obedience in matters of sins? Of course not. Obedience in matters of ma'ruf, matters of goodness. And matters of ma'ruf meaning that it's not over her capacity and it's not haram. And you would find that the life between a husband and his wife is not a life of orders and obedience. No, it doesn't work this way, right? It's as it mentioned in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made al-mawadda wal-rahma, the love and mercy, in the hearts of the husband and the wife, and the original status of the relationship is وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ الْمَعْرُوفِ, live with them with goodness, right? So the life is based on goodness and kindness and love and mercy and so on. But since they are living in one household, there has to be a decision made sometimes, right? And there has to be someone in charge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask him about his responsibility. And if you look from the perspective of the hereafter, forget about the dunya and the desires in it. If a person goes to the think of the hereafter. The woman, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them to stay at home and to take care of their children and their husbands and so on, which is the original place of the woman, and the man is the one responsible for supporting the household. Woman in Islam, she has no responsibility when it comes to financial responsibilities whatsoever. Can she have money? Of course, she has ownership. She can make money. She can work in a halal way if she needs to. But this is something up to the husband, if he allow this to happen, as long as there's no sins involved and so on, because she has a more important duty to be taken care of. Not that she would sit lazy or anything like that. The duty of having taken care of the households, which we spend half of our life or more in it, right? And then you would find people don't care about these places, and they care more about those who want to make big money out of them. So they enslave everybody to work and to make, and who will cash the big money from people working for them, individuals, and we ruin families and relationships and children, and we also disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So understanding the role of each, the men and women, is something very important. And when we see from the perspective of the hereafter, who's the one that is facing more fitan and tribulations and trials and things that can take the person away from the deen and sins and so on. If we apply, the rights and so on, men or women, men, they go out more, they meet people, whether it's an enemy or a friend, or evil people and good people, right? They have to deal with others, they have to spend time away, not necessarily in matters of ibadah, to work hard, to bring the money and so on. So they are more exposed to sins. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved the woman in Islam, made her main responsibility when she's married to take care of the ones that she loves. Right? So she is supposed to be not to do too much on her of a burden, because she's not dealing with strangers. Right? She's raising her own children that she loves dearly. Right? And she got rewards for this. And she get great rewards from this. And she prays at home, she doesn't have to go to the masjid. If she wants to go to the masjid, sure, she should not be prevented, as the Prophet ﷺ said. But if she prays at home, she gets the reward as if the man he has when he goes to the masjid and go back and forth and so on, she gets all of this reward if she prays at home. As the Prophet ﷺ said to the woman that came to him and asked him, when we talked about this hadith before. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for one's religion, for her religion. And part of this ease is because it's that easy to be grateful to the one that is protecting her religion, right? Not the one that is, they're not competing in matters of this world. You understand the point here? If we really, the focus is the deen, right? We want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Person want to enter Jannah. You would find really the favor of the righteous man, not any husband. The righteous husband, he has so great favor on his wife. Why? Because he's protecting her deen. You don't have to pollute yourself. You don't have to expose yourself. I'll take care of you. I'll go out and I'm the one that's going to meet the people and suffer and so on, and expose myself to sins, right? So that he would, I'm not saying to approve the sins of course, but he is more exposed, right? So that he would take care of his household so that it's secure to be away from sins. So it's not just about money and materialistic things, it's about saving one's deen. So as a result of that, a righteous woman would see that in the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the orders are means to save her religion and to make her righteous and so on. And that's why the rights of her husband on her is such a great right? But it's not something for the husband to use as a mean of humiliation. Otherwise, he is also committing a sin when he prays himself or when he's reminding his wife and his children of his favors. And we talked about that before. You bring something home, right? And you would say, as they say, right? The meat on your shoulders is from my khair, from my goodness, right? We should never ever a person say that, because you're reminding them of your favor. That means the reward is gone this way. You're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not doing it for them to be grateful to you. They should for their own selves. But if they don't, right? And if you want to remind them, which becomes very sensitive, you don't remind them because you're angry for your own self. No, you're concerned about them. That she, in that case, she's exposing herself, subjecting herself to a major sin. And she's the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you have mercy and love and so on. You care about her so much that you want her to be among the people of Jannah. Not to use the hadith for your own benefit so that you are the king and so on. It's definitely not the case. It's the case that nasiha is concerned towards others, that a person becomes righteous and obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the kind of kindness where the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ. The best among you are those who are best to their families. And I'm the best to my family. The Prophet ﷺ never would remind his families of his favor, and he is Rasulullah ﷺ. And his wives are in Jannah, all of them in Jannah. Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, praised in the Quran till the Day of Judgment. And he never ﷺ told them that all of this is because of me to you. Never ﷺ said that, and he would be fi mihnati ahli, serving his family, taking care of them. And even sometimes they would, get upset with the Prophet ﷺ, right? And the Prophet ﷺ would take it in a light way, not that they are now subjected to the punishment of Allah. No, this is a normal thing that happens. Ali radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ went one time to the house of Fatima, his daughter, and her husband Ali ibn Abi Talib, there's no people better than this. And he asked her, where is Ayn ibn Ammik? Not where is your husband, where is your cousin? Because he sensed that there is something. So he did not call him by her husband, by your cousin, right? So she said, he's in the masjid. So there was some, not dispute, something that happens between a husband and wife, which is a normal thing. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, right, he went to the masjid to sleep in the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ is the father of the wife, right? And he went to him in the masjid, and he was waking him up, and there was dust on him, and the Prophet ﷺ kept saying to Ali ibn Abi Talib, Qum Aba Turab, Qum Aba Turab. Get up, the father of Turab, kunya, because there was dust on him. And it's a very interesting narration. Maybe we can talk about it. That shows how households were, and how the kindness and goodness, and not again from both sides. Not someone that would use this hadith and go back home and say, see, you did this to me, you're not grateful, and this and that. Not to be used in conflicts whatsoever. It is used again when the heart is concerned towards one's husband, is concerned about his wife, that he wants to save her from the hellfire and to be kind to her. And the same thing for the wife. So yakfurna al-ashir wa yakfurna al-ihsan. So this is what's a major sin, and the Prophet ﷺ explained it. And some men, they would do the same thing. So it's not just for women. A man might do the same thing. Someone that did a favor to you, and were like a father or a mother or whatever, and you find sometimes a person would say that, I've never seen anything good from you. Or he would say that to his wife even, right? So a person has to be careful not to say this whatsoever, and not to be unjust and unfair. This is a sign of being unfair and unjust. Once you hate someone, you forget all the goodness that you have between them. And this is something that also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, that if talaq happens, divorce, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَنْسَوُ الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Do not forget the fadl, the goodness that was between you. Because once there is a dispute, then all kinds of revenge and evil things happens. And this is all the characteristics of hypocrites. إِذَا خَاصَمَ فَجَرَ. The hypocrites, one of their characteristics, if they are in quarrelsome, if they are in dispute, fajr becomes fajr in the khusuma, which means so much transgression and revenge that without the rights. If a person is taking his right, that's fine. But to go over the boundaries and to take one's rights, right? We have to observe that. Even if these rights are given to you by the law, and if it's against the deen, it's haram for you to take it. Even if the judge ruled for you whatever you to take, then it's still not permissible for you to take it if it's not your right. So you have to observe the rulings of Islam. And one of which is, not to get into these details, that if a divorce happens between a husband and a wife, she has to stay in the household till the time of iddah is over. Not that he says the divorce and she's gone because of the divorce. No, she has to stay in the household, and she is not to wear hijab, she even to beautify herself, normal, as if they're husband and wife, so that it's more likely for them to come back again together in the period of the iddah, 3 months. But if the talaq is final and they're divorced, right? They have children, and always the problem with custody and so on, which is a very sad thing among Muslims. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our households from these things. But one of the things, without getting into so much detail, if the woman, if the children are young and they are in need of their mother, of course she has the right if they are under the age, correct? Unless she gets married. If she gets married, according to the law, she can still keep her children. Islamically, no. It is not permissible for her. He has the right to take the children if she gets married to someone else, right? Because that's his children, and not for another man to be in charge of them, because the man in Islam, he's the one in charge. So his sons or daughters, in that case, if she wants to keep them, then she should not marry to someone else. But if she chooses to marry, which is valid, permissible, and they're young, then he has the right to take them. So I mentioned this example because some women, for example, they would say, but she goes to court, the judge will give her the custody of the children. She says, this is my right. That's against the deen of Allah, right? So again, the issue of when it's time of dispute, whether it's from the men and the women, this is so evil for a person to transgress the limits and so on. The point here in the matters of Iman, that the word kufr is mentioned. But does that mean it's a disbelief that takes a person outside the fold of Islam? No. It's a major sin, yes. But if a person dies with this sin and never repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, dies as a Muslim, it does not make him a disbeliever, right? And that means he or she will be in the hereafter. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive and they will enter Jannah, or if they are punished, they will be punished and then eventually they will enter Jannah, as the case with any major sin that has been committed and not repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from. So again, great benefits to be learned from that, and it's for everyone. And the issue of also asking the Prophet ﷺ, asking a question to make it clear, right? and how that question was very benefiting for us to understand what is the meaning of it, so that a person doesn't just take the first statement and would act on it, right? It has to be in the context, and how the context is very important. And the word kufr, not every person that would do an act of kufr is a kafir. To call someone a kafir in this life, in this dunya, he's a Muslim, right? And to call him a kafir, this is not for us to do. This has to be a ruling done by a judge or a scholar or something. After the hujjah, after the matter has been made clear and the evidence are set straight to that person, and he continued to do the act of kufr, right? Something that would take him outside the fold of Islam, then it's a verdict done by a judge. The same way that in Islam, if there is a capital punishment for someone, it is not for the individuals to do it. And if there is no judge, then they don't do it, right? So they don't get a thief and they cut their hand, his hands, for example. That's not permissible for people to do that, right? And if there is nobody's doing it, then it's still not permissible for them to do that. So the same thing with matters of takfir or calling people kuffar and so on. So you can see someone that is doing an act of kufr, but maybe he's ignorant, he doesn't know. Maybe he's in an environment that they do not know exactly what is the matters of the deen, right? Maybe he became insane for a second, right? You waken up somebody, for example, from his sleep and you scare him and he says a word of kufr, for example. It's a bad thing, of course, and a bad sign, but he might say it out of he's not in his senses, right? So somebody passing by outside, he hears that person saying a bad word or a word of kufr, he gives the ruling right away. This person becomes a kafir. And then as a result of that, you know the consequences of this. This is not for the individual people to give these rulings. But what should we do? We should learn what are the deeds that are called kufr, and to be aware of it and to stay away from it and to warn people from it, right? And so on. But not to call people this name as a result of them doing it. But in this hadith, of course, it's not a kufr even if it's done. It's not a kufr that would take the person outside the fold of Islam. It's in the level of the sins or ambitious sin. So inshallah we'll stop at this point. I took too much of your time. صلى الله وسلم على محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم.